Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. We've got lots of folks coming in. It looks like we've got about 20 people here. I'm sure we'll have several that are showing up over the next few minutes as we get started. But welcome. If we haven't met yet, I met many of you in our orientation call last month, but not everyone is able to make it. My name is Nathan Hill, and I'm super grateful to be with you today and really for the next 12 months as we work through lots of different strategies, tactics, ideas, all sorts of things to help you level up your fundraising with a little bit of a focus on digital fundraising specifically. We'll do a lot to help get prepped for Colorado Gives Day, but we're also going to look beyond that too, not just to the end of the year, but going into the following year. How do we continue to grow things like cultivation, new donor onboarding, influence things like retention, write better appeals, all sorts of things we're going to dive into. So while you're jumping in, or while other people are still joining here, feel free to jump into the chat, say hello. Why don't you share what did you have for breakfast this morning? Because we've shared it in Slack, lots about our organizations, which has been awesome. What did you have for breakfast? We'll just get to know you a little bit. You can learn a lot about somebody from their breakfast. I'll share mine. I never eat breakfast. I have a cup of coffee, and around like 10 o'clock, maybe I'll get like a yogurt or something like that to hold me over to lunch. But that's my approach, for better or worse. Jump in the chat and let me know yours. Jordan, what was your breakfast today?
I had a banana
Oh,
because my
very.
2.5-year-old decided he didn't want to eat the banana this morning. So that was my breakfast.
It sounds like we have similar households. Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and we're going to dive in. Again, we'll have more people that are joining over the course of the next few minutes, but we have a lot of ground to cover today. Let me hit share and then give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen. I just want to make sure you can see it before I get too like ahead of my skis here. Okay. Today, we are talking all about metrics and goals. So I mentioned in the Slack channel, if you're in there, to make sure you bring your data hat today. I will just preface today's session with not every session is going to be like down and in the weeds of data and analytics and all that sort of stuff, because some people love that. In fact, if you love that stuff, let me know. I would love to know who's really into that. I'm going to guess it's maybe like 10 people here today. Some people love that type of stuff and diving into things like Google Analytics and looking at reports and trying to get a really good understanding of what's happening in the data. Others of us are terrified of doing that. And so I realize there's a spectrum. We're going to try to make things simple today as we take a very simplified approach to understanding what are those most important metrics to be measuring. How can we use them to help drive us towards making asking better questions about where should we be trying to grow and optimize next. We will have some homework at the end of this session where you'll get to be a little bit hands-on in both Colorado Gives analytics tools as well as Google Analytics if you have that. So that's where we're going. But again, this is we're not going to dive deep into analytics in every single session. So if this is not your cup of tea, do some deep breaths, hang with us today, learn a couple of things. Next week, we'll be talking about copy and a little bit about creative and value proposition, or next month, I should say. So all that said, let's dive in. Again, my name is Nathan Hill. If I sound a bit under the weather today, it's because we've had COVID go through our whole house over the past like 6 days, and I'm on the tail end of it, and I'm here, and I'm doing my best. So if I cough a couple of times, that's why. Thankfully, you can't catch it through a camera. So my name is Nathan Hill. I oversee what we call the NextAfter Institute, which is a part of our larger business called NextAfter, where we really do one thing. We help nonprofits grow their digital fundraising. And we do that in three primary ways. We are a research lab where we go conduct what we call mystery donor research, where we might go make a bunch of different donations to a bunch of different nonprofits and really try to take the pulse of what are nonprofits doing today to try to grow giving. But that doesn't tell us what actually works. It just tells us what other people are doing. How do we know that it's actually effective? We're also a digital first agency where we do everything from running email campaigns and new donor acquisition, paid media, advertising, copywriting, year-end campaigns, the full works. but everything that we do is rooted in A/B testing and optimization. We talked about that a little bit in our orientation call last month, where we're trying to take all those best ideas that are out there, put them to the test using statistical science, and actually decode what works to get more people to say yes to giving. So we do a lot of A/B testing. We're going to look at some of those examples even today. And then we're a training institute. So we take everything that we learn from that research, from testing, from our day-to-day work with nonprofit organizations like yours, and we turn it into training, like what we're going to go through today and every month for the next year together. I like to update this slide every time we talk, which is how many more experiments have been added to our library since last time. It's been about, I think, close to a couple hundred actually since we last chatted. We're now over 7,000 experiments in our library. Every single one of those represents a learning about what works to get more people to say yes to giving. So I know we covered some of that last time, but I know we've got some new faces, people that didn't make the orientation call. So just wanted to set some, do some table setting as to what we're kind of leaning on when we talk about tactics and strategies. I'm not just making stuff up. It's not just my gut feeling or my intuition. I'm trying to remove my gut feeling as much as possible and lean on what the data has told us actually works to get people to say yes to giving. A little bit of housekeeping before we dive into the details today. Many of you are in that Slack channel. In fact, most of you are in that Slack channel already, and we've posted several resources in there. One that I want to draw your attention to if you have not activated already. Through Level Up, you get 24-month access, 2-year access to the NextAfter Institute, where we have about 12 on-demand digital fundraising courses that dive into everything from analytics to writing your emails to year-end fundraising strategy to A/B testing, donation page optimization. There's a whole bunch of things that are covered in those courses. And again, you get 2-year access to those courses. A lot of what we will cover in these monthly sessions is looking at portions of what we cover in those courses, but we don't have enough time in the hour that we have each month to unpack the whole thing. So by giving you access to these courses, it is a way for you to dive deeper. If there's a particular topic that's of interest to you and you say, oh, we really need more of that, I want to dive deeper, I want to get some more tactics around that topic, you have these courses available to you, both for the next year as well as the following year. So if it's too much to dive into these now, you've still got it for the following year after that. You can scan that QR code and go get signed up. Again, the link is also in the Slack channel. Speaking of Slack, if you are not already in there, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 of you that haven't joined yet. I'd love for you to join us in here. This is the primary place where we're going to be posting different updates about sessions and homework, and just actively having some conversation based on what we're covering in our monthly sessions together. So if you haven't joined yet, you can go ahead and scan that QR code. These slides will come out to you as well if you want to do it afterwards, after our session today. But you can scan that QR code. I'll give you a second to do it if you want to now. And you can join our Slack community to make sure that you can take part in the conversation, as well as it's going to be the primary place to share your homework when we have some homework out of these different sessions, like we will today. Last thing for you in terms of housekeeping is this. Jordan posted this page in that Slack channel as well, but I want to draw your attention to it here. Also, she's put together a great page for you with all sorts of different resources. This is where the various recordings will live as well from a lot of these different sessions. So make sure that you utilize this page, maybe go scan it and then bookmark it so you don't lose it. But this is always going to be a great resource center for you for all things related to Level Up and related to coloradogives.org. So make sure you bookmark that as well. Again, you'll get all these slides, so you can go scan these later if you want, rather than trying to manage all these things at once right now. For those that are active in Slack, I mentioned this about 45 minutes ago to give some of you time to prepare. I do have an icebreaker question beyond just what you had for breakfast. And by the way, there's lots of interesting things in here. Heather had a smoothie today. Jenna's also in Team Banana, banana for breakfast. Tea and toast from Jenna. Awesome. Pizza eggs from Roxy. I need explanation on that. I don't know what that is, but I'm really interested. Is it like just like scrambled eggs with like pizza toppings? Let me know in the chat. I'm very curious now. This is great. Here's my main icebreaker question for today. this is kind of our original question of the day at NextAfter. We started a channel in our own company Slack a few years ago. This is the very first question we asked, and it's really interesting. If you could only watch one actor or actress's entire movie collection for the rest of your life, who would you choose? It doesn't have to be the same series of films, just like the line of continuity just has the same actor or same actress. Oh, we got some good ones coming in. Oh, Owen Wilson, I see, Matt Damon, Robert Redford, Jason Bateman. Oh, very nice. Groucho Marx. I have not heard that answer before. That's fantastic. Paul Rudd. That gives you that gives you a lot, including like half the Marvel movies, which is pretty fun. Robin Williams. Ooh, solid. Meryl Streep, Patrick Swayze. Oh, they're coming in too fast. Brad Pitt's just his face. You just want to follow his face and see nothing else. That's hilarious. Chris Hemsworth, very nice. Anne Hathaway. There's lots of great answers here. There's lots of great answers. I love it. My go-to answer here is Harrison Ford, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan. That gives me the original Star Wars trilogy. It gives me the sequel trilogy, which is like, okay. But also all the Indiana Jones and then a bunch of other stuff beyond that too. So that's my answer. Thank you for entertaining me on that one. It's always fun to see where people's heads go with that question. All right, here's where we're going today. Here's what you can expect by the end of our time. A couple things, 3 things that we're going to make sure we try to cover and learn today. By the way, if you would keep yourself on mute, that would be wonderful. Number 1, we're going to look at 3 key metrics to help you know where to optimize next. So that's what you'll take away today is what are those 3 key metrics? Secondly, we're going to do some benchmarking across the year-end season, looking at those 3 key metrics. So you have a good understanding of, when does revenue come in during the whole year-end season, but also when is web traffic typically high? What can you expect in terms of things like conversion rates? So we'll look at a few kind of key milestones during that using those metrics. And then the third thing that we're going to work on is how do you go measure your own? How do you go measure your own 3 key metrics using the tools that you have at your disposal? So that's where we're going. Your homework from today, which we'll come back to at the end, but just so you have it kind of in your brain as we're going through, is that your action item is to go use the tools that you have, coloradogives.org and Google Analytics, if you have that set up, to go analyze your 3 key metrics that we're going to work through today. Ultimately, we're not just going to look at data for the sake of data, but we're going to look at data to give us some insights as to where should we put our focus as we think about trying to improve results going into this year's Colorado Gives Day. Does that sound like a good plan? I see some head nods. I see some thumbs ups. Let's go. 3 key metrics. This is I'll back up. We like to refer to this as the flux capacitor of online revenue maximization. You don't have to remember that, but our founder, his name is Tim, is a huge Back to the Future fan. If you know anything about Back to the Future, you may recognize that flux capacitor term. That is the device that powers the DeLorean and allows Marty McFly to both go back to the past and then back to the future. And so the idea is that these 3 key metrics can allow us to, launch ourselves into the future as we try to grow giving and grow generosity. We call it the flux capacitor just because it has 3 main points on it. That's really the extent of the analogy here. But there's the 3 key metrics really come down to this: traffic, conversion rate, and average gift. Traffic being how many people are actually showing up. If you think about digital fundraising in a broad sense, this is how many people are actually hitting your website and showing up, because that's really the pool of people that you could influence in the most significant way. Secondly, you have conversion rates, which is how many people who show up actually end up giving. They may end up giving a couple of different times, which would increase that conversion rate as well. But effectively, how many people that show up actually end up making a gift. Third is average gift size, which is pretty self-explanatory. How much do they give on average? And the reason that we think these 3 metrics are so important is because you multiply them together and they give you your revenue. And so in a very simple approach, you can look at these 3 metrics to understand kind of where should you be focusing your efforts next. You can use this to analyze the effectiveness of your website. You can use this to analyze the effectiveness of a specific page, a specific donation page. You can use this to even understand things beyond just digital fundraising, because effectively, if we're calling it, how many people are showing up is what traffic is. You could use that same model to go look at an event that you're hosting. How do I get more people in the door and to actually come to the gala that we're going to host? Of those people, maybe we're selling out the seats, but we're not getting everybody to give or give at the level that we want to. Okay, if we don't have a traffic problem, we have a conversion problem. How do we get more people that are, actually attending the event to choose to give, or to choose to give even more? So this type of an approach, although it's kind of built around a digital fundraising model, is just a very simple way for us to look at really any facet of our fundraising program and give us some questions to ask about where should we focus our efforts next. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Another way that you might think about this that may be helpful for you is, instead of traffic conversion rate and average gift, you can also think about it in terms of names, donors, and dollars. How many people are like in my sphere of influence between email lists, website traffic, reach of our advertising, our direct mail list? What's my sphere of influence in terms of names that I can reach, whether they're donors or not? Secondly, then, is obviously donors. How many people are giving, and then how much are they giving in dollars? So that might be another way to think about it. A quick little, we call it a thought experiment, really just some fun with math, some fun with numbers, just to see how these different metrics interact. Because when we look at things in isolation, it's easy to look at traffic and say, well, if we can increase it by a little bit, that's probably a good thing, but how does that influence revenue? When we look at them together, it helps paint a more, I think, compelling picture of how these different metrics interact and can lead us to significant revenue growth. So go with me here. Imagine that your website has 1,000 visitors. For some of you, that's, we'll say per month, 1,000 visitors per month. For some of you, that would be amazing. For some of you, that's like, oh, that would be bad if we only had 1,000 visitors a month. We're all at a different place, so I'm just pulling a number out here for some clean math. Imagine you have 1,000 visitors a month to your website. You get 10% of those visitors to convert, meaning make a donation in that month. And on average, they give $100. If this is true, you multiply these three factors together and you have $10,000 in revenue. It's some very simple math. Now imagine that you were able to try some things, maybe test some things in order to increase your web traffic. If you're able to increase your web traffic by 25%, well, now you're up to 1,250 visitors to your website per month. And very simply, you multiply these all together. Now you have a 25% increase in revenue. But what if I was able to influence multiple of these metrics? We're not just adding 25% to 25%. We actually start to see some kind of compounding effects as we see increases across these different metrics together. If we increase our conversion rate to 12.5%, so an increase of 25%, now we're up to $15,625 a month, which is a 56% increase in revenue. If we can do the same thing to average gift, and now we've increased all of these each by 25%, well, now we're at nearly $20,000, which is a 95% increase in revenue. So I share this just to show you that these different metrics, they work together. It's not just about influencing one or the other, but in the combination of them, it's a means for actually understanding how we can get to bigger and faster growth. Now, I'm not going to promise that just by looking at these three metrics, you magically overnight are going to have exponential growth, but it starts to give us a path with the right questions to ask to understand where do we optimize next and how do we start to influence growth in a holistic way. That said, what are the questions? What questions do these help us ask? Because again, we never want to look at data for the sake of looking at data. You could spend all day, every day in Google Analytics reports and ColoradoGives.org reporting and all that sort of stuff, and never really walk away with any next steps or real strategies. You can always look at new data and always have more questions to ask, but it doesn't always mean it's practical. So we want to make sure that we're using these metrics to help us ask important questions that can lead to new ideas that can lead to growth. So for example, traffic, and none of this is rocket science, it's very simple. If I have low traffic, if I'm looking at all my key metrics and I'm saying, you know what, when I get people to a donation page, they convert at a pretty high level. And you know what? They give at a pretty good level. Maybe they're given a pretty sizable average gift size. Maybe they're given $150 on average, $200 on average, maybe more. But I'm just not getting a lot of people to show up in the first place. That then it begs the question, how do we get more people on the website? How do we get more people maybe to the donation page itself? How do we get more people to actually show up to the event? It's really effective if we get them in the seat, but how do we get more people to actually show up? How do we get more people on that direct mail list? We've got a really great program running. It converts at a really high level. It's really efficient, but we just don't have a big list. How do we get more people there? It helps you start to zero in on the right questions. I'll show you one experiment example here. It's a very simple experiment. It may be one for you to try as well if your website looks somewhat similar to this. But this was actually a couple years ago. We hosted a webinar on just year-end fundraising, and specifically we were talking about how to maximize the effectiveness of your website, how to make sure that when someone lands on your website during like that last week of the year, or really during any high urgency campaign like Colorado Gives Day, how do you make sure that they clearly see the opportunity to give and you drive more of the right traffic to the donation page? Because oftentimes motivation to give is high, and our goal is really, how do we get them to the right place? Because oftentimes they're looking for it. This organization ran this test after watching that webinar, and they said, well, okay, here is our original page. Our navigation says give at the top. It has a button in the navigation to send you to the donation page, but it uses this sort of what I would call a ghost button styling, where it has the outline, but the fill color, the background color matches everything else that's in the navigation. So it stands out a little bit from the rest of the navigation, but it doesn't like pop out of the page at you to capture your attention. So what they tried, what they tested in an A/B test was this. They changed a couple different things here. They've changed from give to donate, and they're clarifying that you're donating to the acronym of the organization, TGC. And they changed the color, which really is based on what we've seen in other testing, really probably the primary factor that's going on here. The color has changed so that it jumps out of the navigation. It stands out as being very different from the rest of the navigation options to capture your attention just visually in a more effective way. And what they found was that their page was converting well, but they just weren't getting enough traffic. This was able to drive a 25% increase in clicks, getting more people that were already visiting their website to choose to click through to the giving page during that year-end season to actually go consider giving a gift. So as we look again at those three key metrics, and we're seeing whether it's on a page or it's our website as a whole, we're just not getting enough people to show up. It starts to prompt us to ask some specific questions around what might be in the way of getting someone to actually see that donation page, or getting someone to the landing page, or getting someone to the website. Because the strategies to get more traffic are very different oftentimes than the strategies to get more conversions. So we have to make sure that we can kind of isolate those with the questions we're asking in the tests that we might be running. So there's just one simple example. As I go here, feel free to drop any comments or thoughts or ideas in the chat. If something that I'm saying is unclear or something like that, I'd love for you to just kind of interrupt me with a comment there. I have that on the side of my screen. I'm trying to keep an eye on it, particularly looking at the pizza eggs comment at the moment. Again, I'm curious about that. And I need to not be distracted by it. So let's move on to the next key metric. We've talked about traffic. Let's talk about conversion rate a little bit. If we are getting lots of people to show up, we're happy with those numbers. We're happy with the amount of people showing up on the donation page. Maybe we're just not getting enough of them to actually give. Maybe you got thousands of people showing up and maybe you're seeing a 1%, 2% conversion rate on your donation page itself. Overall on your website conversion rate, maybe it's really, really low. Maybe even it's so minuscule, maybe it's hard to measure. Your question then is, how do we just get more people to say yes to giving? We're getting them in the right place, but what can we do to inspire them further to say yes to giving? Maybe it's something about the copy on our page. Maybe it's something about the actual form that's on the donation page itself. Maybe something is broken. Maybe something's actually functionally wrong with the technology. Maybe we need to go explore that and make sure there's no errors or issues. Hopefully that's not the case for any of you, but that's something that comes up often. So we have to start thinking through those different questions and understanding what's keeping people from saying yes, and what can we try, what can we test to get more people to say yes to giving. Here's one example. And I pulled this one specifically as we start to think about Colorado Gives Day and the year-end season in general. I think it's pretty relevant. We're not going to read both of these emails in whole because they're very long, but I'm just showing you. These are two different emails. This was an A/B split test, so it's sent to the same audience, just split it in half randomly. Half of the audience got version A, half of the audience got version B. It is an appeal during the year-end season to get more people to give. And what they tested, and I'll kind of crop it and zoom in for you, is a different approach to how they frame their goal. Version A is a very typical approach to framing any type of goal for a year-end campaign, for a Colorado Gives Day campaign, just purely based around revenue. And they're saying this: we're so close to reaching our goal of raising $100,000 by the end of the year. The challenge, the potential challenge with a revenue goal like this is that if I can only give you $100, I'm not really seeing any significant progress on that goal. I'm hoping and I'm praying and I'm crossing fingers that enough other people are also going to give $100 to get all the way there, but I can't really move the needle on that goal in a significant way. Unless I'm going to give maybe $1,000 or greater, which not everyone can. So what they tested was version B, which is using a number of donors based goal. And there's lots of ways to come to what this number is. Doing a little bit of math, very simply, just looking at like your average gift sizes, you can divide that out based on what your revenue target actually is. Also thinking through, what percentage of people typically give at more of that like mid-level range, maybe even seeing major gifts come through. So there's lots of ways you can kind of arrive at this number, but where they arrived was we need 92 donors to step forward and make a year-end gift by the end of the year. From this point in the campaign, they needed 92 more donors. So whether I'm going to give $10, $100, $1,000, $100,000, I can move the needle in a significant way. I can be one of those 92 donors. That's something that's really tangible. It's accessible for me, again, regardless of my level of giving. And what they found was that this actually led to a 37% increase in donations or conversions, getting more people to actually say yes to giving because they framed the goal in a way that was a bit more accessible and tangible. So that's just one of a seemingly infinite amount of tactics that you could try to influence people to say yes, but that's a test that's very centered around increasing the conversion rate, getting more people to say yes. The third metric here is then average gift size. And average gift size can actually be a bit of a tricky metric. Oftentimes, even with very sophisticated programs that have lots of data insights and that sort of stuff, sometimes I think as fundraisers we can get very fixated on this metric, and if we're seeing a dip in average gift size, that can be really concerning. But my encouragement is always that we should make sure that we're looking at the long term, not just average gift size today, but the long-term value of those donors. There's things that you can do to increase average gift size or decrease average gift size that can affect these other metrics. If you're driving up conversion rate, it may be at the expense of your average gift size. We'll look at an experiment around that, but that's why it's important to always keep these metrics kind of all together, understanding how are they together influencing your revenue, not just now, but also into the future. But in short here, average gift size helps you ask this question of how do we just inspire more people to be more generous? We're getting lots of people to show up. They're converting at a good rate, but maybe they're not giving at the most generous level. How do we get them to choose to give maybe a little bit more? Again, there's lots of ways that you can do that and try to influence that. Some of the, and we'll look at some of these experiments over the next several months together. There's some like best practice type of ways that are promoted out there to increase average gift size that actually can be pretty harmful. Things that you can do in the gift array to try to manipulate it that we think, oh, this is going to win, and it actually doesn't. We'll look at some of those as we go on here, but here's one interesting experiment, and this is I like this experiment a lot because it shows that these types of metrics are not just about the individual tactic on the page, but they can actually help us uncover and unlock more holistic strategies as well. So this organization in version A of this A/B test, what they were doing was they have this whole library of content of books, and they're selling them like an e-commerce type of product. So you can go to the store on their website, you can read about the various books, You can purchase it. If you squint there, the cost of this book is $18.99. When you're selling a product, you typically have a fixed cost. And there's some variance in there for like taxes and all that sort of stuff. And if there's shipping costs and all that. But you basically have a fixed cost. Every transaction that flows through, anyone who's purchasing the book is going to pay $18.99. What they wanted to test was, should we take this book and instead of selling it, should we go offer it effectively as a thank you gift for someone who is making a donation, using it as a premium offer? They wanted to test this as a holistic strategy. So you'll see the copy is very different because it's framing it in a very different way. They're not asking you to go purchase the book. They're actually leading with strong value proposition language about why you should donate to the organization. And in thanks for doing so, you're going to get this. We're going to send you this book, and here's the value of the book. And you can see even on the gift array in version B, they start at $25 in the gift array. That's already a lot higher than your fixed $18.99 cost. So they're wondering here a couple things. How would this strategy affect conversion rates? But also, how is it going to affect average gift? Because at the end of it, even if conversions are the same, maybe we get people to actually give more by asking them to donate in the average, and we see average gift go up, or the average cost per order if you're using some e-commerce type of language. What they found at the end of the day was that pivoting their strategy and offering this type of book as a thank you gift for a donation led to a, you ready for it, 199% increase in revenue. There's also a lot to consider here as well about, the transactional nature of just buying a book versus the commitment level of someone that's choosing to donate. So there's a potential that this can also impact retention of this person often into the future because they're aligned with the mission of the organization. They're not just showing up to get a book. What they found as they dove into the data is that two primary things happened here. By leading with the book as a thank you offer, a premium offer, it did increase conversions by 92%, but it also increased the average gift size by 55%. People were much more willing to choose to say yes to making a donation than they were to just making a transaction. And when they did so, they chose to give above and beyond what the cost of the book was by a significant margin, by 55%. So that's a lot more revenue now coming into the organization. That's not just around a book, it's about actually giving to the cause. So this is a pretty interesting experiment. And there's lots of experiments like that. And I like to share that one because, again, I think it's helpful to understand how these types of metrics can help us think about a holistic strategy differently, not just the nuances of a specific type of page. Here is another interesting experiment that I wanted to show because it kind of shows the inverse. Like, what do you do when maybe there's tactics that can influence one metric but maybe harm the other one? So this one is a fun one. It's just about the gift array. Version A here starts at $75. It goes up to $250, and there's 4 different options on the gift array. Version B takes a different approach. It still has 4 options, but it significantly lowers the ask amounts. It starts at $25 and only goes up to $100. Now, some context about this donation page and this donation form is that it was being used with a new donor acquisition campaign. So before I even show you any metrics, one thing to think about is, what would you rather have in this case? Would you rather have, if your goal, if your campaign is to acquire new donors, would you rather have more new donors, or would you rather have a slightly higher average gift size? Something to think about, something to contemplate. Because what they ended up, oh, sorry, I dropped my clicker. What they ended up finding was that dropping the gift array amounts in version B led to a 38% increase in donations, meaning conversion rate. They got more people to choose to say yes to giving, and these are new donors. So 38% increase in new donors from this campaign. However, it did impact average gift in the inverse way. So version A here had a $57.26 average gift size. In total, they brought in $13,169 in revenue during this kind of testing window from this campaign. Version B, it did drop average gift size all the way down to $43. But in the net, in the immediate term, they saw an increase in revenue, $13,833 in total revenue. So they're getting more new donors, they're getting more total revenue. Average gift size is a little bit lower, and that's where you then have to make a strategic decision. Am I okay with getting a smaller average gift size now if I'm still getting effectively the same amount of revenue, even a little bit better in this campaign? That I'm probably going to go with version B, but I'm also needing to factor in the longer term impact, because I'm acquiring a lot of new donors, and I know that a percentage of them are going to become a second year donor and a key multi-year donor, and they're going to continue to grow in value. So even if my revenue was a little bit less, I would probably still go with version B, because I'm getting more donors in the door and looking at their potential lifetime value down the road. So that's why I say this average gift metric can be a little bit tricky and a little bit complicated, because it's not always just about how do we get a greater gift now. It's about understanding the longer term impact of all these different metrics on the value of these donors, often into the future. One thing to call out here in terms of tools is that, I mean, we're looking at all these kind of different gift array types of things. I see some questions in the chat, and Jordan's on top of answering those too, which is awesome. But one call out here is that you do have the option inside of coloradogives.org to go modify and customize your gift arrays, both in dollar amounts, but also with adding some little descriptors and stuff. If you wanted to add some specific context to, why you should give $12, why you should give $100, how many people giving $100 is able to impact, things like that. So that's also something that you can add, and potentially something you can test when we get to talking about A/B testing. All right, that's a lot. Hopefully it's a fairly simple model for you to think through and follow. Again, we'd never want to just be pulling data for the sake of looking at data. We want to make sure it has kind of an end goal. And in this case, looking at these three metrics are going to help us ask more of the right questions to figure out, where do we go next? What do we change next? What do we test next? How do we optimize our performance next? Any questions about that before we dive into some benchmarking? I see one from Kathleen asking about the last experiment. Conversion rate was higher in example B, ? Yes, conversion was higher in example B. Were any new donors in A? There were new donors in A. I don't know if I can check my notes here. I'm not sure if I dropped it in my notes. I don't have the exact conversion rates for each of those in front of me. I could pull them from the full write-up. I didn't put them in my PowerPoint notes, but they both were converting new donors. I mean, you can see the revenue that's coming in here, but version B acquired a lot more of them. And in the net, even with the average gift size decrease, led to an increase in overall revenue. So again, you're seeing how all these different metrics can kind of work together. Just because you're getting a lift in one doesn't mean all the others are great. We have to go measure them all and understand the holistic picture of how it's impacting revenue. Okay, good question. Well, let's jump on to some benchmarking. Again, if you have other questions as we're going through, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll try to keep my eye over there. And again, Jordan's on it with any of those questions about the platform and strategy too. So keep dropping them in there.
We have one or two good ones about recurring and retention. Is that something that we're going to cover a little bit further on?
Would you draw my attention to them? Because
I think sure. Yes. So Tara asks, when looking at these three metrics, so the overarching metrics, where do recurring donors sit? And then Casey had a similar thought. Does retention factor into conversion or gift size? Those are fantastic questions. And that's kind of like, those are the next level questions beyond this kind of simplified approach. And that's, again, is why I say that average gift is kind of a tricky one, because we can use this model to look at a given campaign or a specific donation page or something like that. If you zoom out and you go look at the program holistically, those revenue metrics get a little bit more complicated. And instead of just looking at like the one-time average gift, we do need to be looking at more things like, ultimately, really, if you're going to simplify it down, you're looking at lifetime value or projected lifetime value of those donors. That's probably what you would slide into the average gift slot when you're looking at your program holistically. Recurring donors, and even looking at retention, I would say those are both kind of sub metrics of that larger lifetime value. Because if you get more recurring donors,
they're giving more often, usually at a lower average gift size than a one-time donor, but their retention rates go through the roof. I think it's like an 82% increase in the likelihood of someone retaining if they become a recurring donor, and that's across every life cycle stage. And retention is a factor of that also. Obviously, recurring donors can increase in retention. There's other things that influence retention as well. Even just how quickly you get someone to give that second gift. If they give a second gift within their first year, they're significantly more likely to retain into year 2. So those are all like sub-metrics under that larger like lifetime value metric. That does make kind of the revenue calculations a bit more complicated when you look at the program holistically. Hopefully that helps and doesn't just muddy the waters, because it does get messy when you look at things in that way.
Well, and I've read that too. I just want to highlight that if you want a donor to give on Colorado Gives Day and you want them to give again before the next year, end of year is a great time for that secondary appeal to get them to feel good and hopefully come back at a higher rate in 2025. Thanks for bringing that up. I have read that before.
Yeah, and we'll look at that when we get to some strategy around like the year-end season holistically. We'll start to touch on it here in a little bit today too. Yeah, we'll certainly get there. Let's jump into a little bit of benchmarking. I do see a question from Caitlin. Let's see if we can address that real quick too. Have you A/B tested what impact the pop-up we can put on our website encouraging people to donate has? The little box that shows up on each page but isn't embedded in it. I need to go look specifically at what that looks like, because I don't know off the top of my head. I am not fully versed in the whole Colorado Gives platform. I'm kind of taking it piece by piece, but
I'll respond to Caitlin, but just so you know, Caitlin, what we are providing are embeddable forms. So we do not provide a pop-up. Pop-ups, from what I've read and understood, kind of vary as far as their performance. They can do really well or they can distract depending on how you're using them. So let's chat further about that. Thank you for that question.
I would also say some of it depends on the timing, especially during a high urgency season, year end as a whole, specifically Colorado Gives Day, those last couple days leading up to the day. Those types of pop-ups are often most effective when urgency is already high, because it's helping just reduce some layers of friction and get more people to the right place faster, which can help increase that overall conversion rate. So it is an effective tactic when it's deployed in the right way. That's something we'll unpack as we get in a couple of months as we talk more about tactics around year end specifically. All right. We got some more questions, but we're going to keep rolling. We can spend some time coming back to those at the end as well. A little bit of benchmarking on these key metrics. We'll look just kind of briefly at overall benchmarking. We put together this benchmark we call the Digital First Fundraising Benchmark. We released it back in March of this year. It's the first time we've created a report like this, where basically we're taking about 30 different organizations that we're working with on a day-to-day basis, and we have complete visibility into all of their different like data silos. We're stitching them all together to paint a holistic picture of what the program looks like and doing some benchmarking based on it. So this is all based on actual performance, not survey data, as most benchmarks are. And in this case, all these organizations are relatively using a unified approach, where they're making an intentional investment in digital fundraising, not to replace their direct mail, not to replace offline channels, but to lead their program from a communication standpoint. Almost every donor, whether they are Gen Z or they are boomers and above, across every age demographic, people are online. Even if they don't give to you online, they're being influenced by online channels. Someone who's in their 70s is likely has the Facebook app and is being influenced by things that they see there. And so these organizations are recognizing that and choosing to lead their communication strategy from a digital first perspective. So that's kind of the unifying factor here. Across these organizations, what they see is that per month, and for some of you, this may be a shocking metric, and that's okay. We're all different stages of growth. What they see per month on average is 125,000 visits to their website. Now, it's important to know that a lot of these organizations are making significant investments in growing their traffic. This is going to have significant variance. If you're a very locally focused organization, you're probably not going to see this level of web traffic. If you have a more national or international reach, this might be in the cards for you. But these organizations are often spending significantly on digital advertising with a focus on acquisition, and that's driving up traffic in a significant way. When you do that, when you drive up traffic significantly, it often brings down conversion rate. So you may look at this 0.61 overall website conversion rate and say, well, that seems pretty low. But what this is often an indicator of is that if you have this type of conversion rate, it probably means you're doing the right things to acquire new people and new audiences. If you have really sky high conversion rates, if your website's converting 10% of visitors, it probably means that the only people that are really showing up are your most loyal donors, and you're not doing enough to go reach new audiences and new people. When you do that as well, when traffic is increasing and you're acquiring a lot of new donors, it also means that on average, your average gift size is going to sit more in the $70 range. Some of you may be used to a much higher average gift sizes, but oftentimes when you have a really high average gift size, again, it means the majority of people who are giving are those most loyal donors and not really anybody else. So when you're investing in acquisition, it often means that your average gift size drops down to more of the $70 range. So that's kind of some basic benchmarking for these digital first organizations. What I want to get to is really looking at the year-end season and specifically Colorado Gives Day. I will say I don't have a specific benchmark for Colorado Gives Day. It may be something that we put together over time here. But what I do have is a lot of benchmarking around the year-end season as a whole. So we'll look at a couple milestone dates in there to give some benchmarking around when does revenue come in, when does traffic come in, what should our expectations be as we think about how Colorado Gives Day fits in that bigger year-end picture. Some key dates. We like to define the year-end season as starting on November 15th. It doesn't mean you're sending an email on November 15th, but for the sake of benchmarking, because of the fluctuations of when Thanksgiving typically falls and all that sort of stuff, we just make it easy and say, let's measure from November 15th to the end of the year. So it's a 45-day period that we are benchmarking. Within that, again, a couple key days to note. One is that Giving Tuesday this year is on December 3rd. Colorado Gives Day happens a week after that on December 10th. We're going to look at some benchmarking around the whole season, around the end of the year, and around Giving Tuesday specifically to give us some context as to what might we see in terms of performance for Colorado Gives Day specifically. Before we look at some different numbers and things, I want to just start to frame up something to plant a couple of seeds as we think about strategy around these giving days. It's just a very simple sample strategy for you. Because a question that can easily come up is, if we're focused on Colorado Gives Day, what do we do about Giving Tuesday? Do we take advantage of it? Do we talk about it at all? Do we sweep it under the rug? Do we treat it totally separately? My kind of working recommendation here is this, that I would likely use Giving Tuesday as sort of the kickoff to your Colorado Gives Day. There's already naturally going to be a lot of excitement about giving on that day. Based on the reporting and benchmarking from the Giving Tuesday people themselves, and the amount of impressions across social media about Giving Tuesday on the day, you have to be completely disconnected from the internet on Giving Tuesday in order to miss it. Everyone's going to see something about it. So important to take advantage of that, even if you're not leaning all the way into the Giving Tuesday messaging. There's lots of ways you can craft your copy, but I would use this as sort of the kickoff to say, hey, on this Giving Tuesday, we're thinking about Colorado Gives Day that's coming a week from now. Here's our goal for Colorado Gives Day, and start to set those expectations of what your targets are, what the reasons to give is, what the goal is for your donors. So I would send that kickoff email on Giving Tuesday, and then sprinkle in some cultivation, some content offers. These are things we'll talk about later on. You probably have a direct appeal that's coming a day or two before Colorado Gives Day. You have a high urgency appeal likely coming out on the day, maybe two, maybe you have a morning and an evening send. Again, we'll unpack all of that in a future session, but I just wanted to clarify that we don't want to sweep Giving Tuesday under the rug. We don't want to necessarily have all these different huge high urgency days like back to back to back to back to back, but I think we can craft sort of a cohesive narrative using Giving Tuesday as the kickoff and leading towards Colorado Gives Day on the 10th. All that said, let's look at some numbers and expectations. In 2023, as we're looking at about 30 different organizations, what we found was that 5% of revenue for the year-end season came in on Giving Tuesday. Now, when you're factoring in Colorado Gives Day, you're likely going to see that be even higher if you're measuring that whole week. But to put it in context, what we saw on December 31st was that 14% of year-end revenue came in on the last day of the year last year. This is actually pretty low compared to a typical year because December 31st fell on a Sunday. Hard to get people's attention on a Sunday. So I'll show you what 2022 looked like, which was a little better. It fell on a Saturday, which is better than a Sunday, but it's still not the same as, I think this year will be on a Tuesday. The last week of the year itself brought in 32% of revenue for the entire year-end season. And I show this to you because I want us to make sure that we, as we think about Colorado Gives Day, we understand that it's kind of the launch of your whole year-end season. There's significant activity, there's significant revenue that's going to come in, but it's also not the whole thing. We can't just say we're done after Colorado Gives Day. I want us to go create a kind of a cohesive strategy across the whole year-end season. When we look back to 2022, when December 31st was on a Saturday, we see some similar breakdowns, but December 31st was much more significant. 4% of revenue came in on Giving Tuesday. 20% came in on December 31st, so that's up from the 14% we saw last year. The last week of the year brought in 47% of year-end revenue. I see a question there, is December 31 revenue included in the after December 25? Yes, it is. So we're looking at that entire period from after the Christmas holiday all the way through the end of the season. Good clarifying question. As we look at these three key metrics and just kind of compare those two key giving days, there's a bunch of numbers on the screen, but I'll highlight some things for you. The traffic between these couple of days, despite the big revenue difference, the traffic is nearly identical. About 2% of traffic for the year-end season came in on Giving Tuesday last year. About 2% of traffic for the year-end season came in on December 31st last year. The big difference is down here in conversion rates and average gift size. Conversion rate was 60% higher on December 31st, jumping up from a 5% to an 8%. Average gift size was 92% higher, jumping from $179 to $346. There's likely a lot of reasons for that. I've seen some interesting research, particularly from our friends at Classy, where they've reported in the past that Giving Tuesday is often a good day for acquisition and activation of even of like lapsed donors, where then December 31st is likely those more consistent, loyal donors who are getting their gift in before that tax deadline, and they're often going to give at a higher level. So that's something to consider as we think about our communication, if we're kicking off on Giving Tuesday, leading through the kind of culmination on Colorado Gives Day, is that it might be a really good time to think about how are we activating new donors when there's a lot of energy around giving, as well as reactivating maybe some of those lapsed donors who have fallen off, but might now see the excitement around the Colorado Gives Day campaign. Also keep in mind, though, that our baseline conversion rate was a 0.61%. So whether it's Giving Tuesday or December 31st, that 5%, that 8% conversion rate is so much higher than your typical day of the year. Urgency to give, motivation to give is tremendously high, and we have to take advantage of it. Just kind of closing thoughts, I guess, on Colorado Gives Day itself. We're going to get way more into strategy as we go through future sessions here, but my encouragement to you would be to treat this day with a high sense of urgency, while also knowing that it's setting the stage for an even larger year-end giving season. We're not just going to plan communication for 7 days leading up to Colorado Gives Day. We're going to look at how it fits in that larger year-end season as well. Keeping in mind, again, there's significantly high traffic on this day and during the whole communication window that we'll be talking about. There's significantly high conversion rates because motivation to give is very high, and it might be a good time to focus on new donor activation. All right, I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a sip of my water. And if you have any questions about any of that, feel free to drop them in and we can try to address a couple of them. But next, we're going to jump into a bit of the practicalities of how do we measure these key metrics. I'm doing a quick time check. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes here, so we'll try to move quickly through this. And I think I've tried to simplify it so we're not overcomplicating things with all sorts of reports. But a good quote to keep in mind is that you can't improve what you can't measure. If we can't actually measure the results and measure them over time, it's nearly impossible to know, are we doing the right things that are moving the needle in the right direction? So we have to be able to measure, even if it's just a few key metrics. Again, give you a little warning. We're about to talk about Google Analytics. So if this is not your thing, take some time, pause, do those deep breaths, and we're going to dive in. I'll also share this with you too. If you don't have Google Analytics set up for your website, or if this is just like way outside of your skill set, first of all, it's okay. We've got solutions for it. Second of all, Catchafire can be a huge help. They have kind of a stock project for setting up Google Analytics reporting, and you have access to Catchafire through Colorado Gives and through Level Up. So that's something to explore if you don't currently have this set up. In fact, this should probably supersede all the other homework that I'll assign at the end of our session here. If you don't have this set up, I would want you to focus on just getting this done, starting that project through Catchafire so you can start to get some of that reporting. Even if you're not going to use the whole tool right now, starting to capture that data so you have historical data to reference as you start to level up your skills is going to be really important. That said, in order to calculate our 3 key metrics, you need to be able to find 3 other metrics. One is simply web traffic. That is kind of a core metric. It's not a calculated one. It's just one you can simply pull from a Google Analytics report. That one's very simple. We'll look at that in a moment. The other 2 is you need to be able to measure your total number of donations, your actual donations. And then third is your total revenue. And I want to show you where to pull these, because your homework is going to be to go pull these metrics and go calculate your 3 key metrics. Through coloradogives.org, you can very simply get access to these two metrics that you're going to need. And I want to show you where to go. So this is your dashboard. It should look something like this, where you've got lots of different data points that are displayed to you basically as soon as you log in. You can filter some of these widgets to look at like last 12 months, last 6 months, last 90 days, things like that. There's some charts down below as well that you can toggle, that you can filter with to look at dollars raised over time. You can look at splits by your different campaigns if you're tracking them individually. You can even look at page views. I would encourage you, though, and we'll look at where to pull this, to get that web traffic from Google Analytics when we're calculating these 3 key metrics, because we want to look at not just people who are hitting the Colorado Gives kind of portal, but we want to look at all the people kind of in your sphere of influence on your website, because there's things we can try and test to drive more of those people into a Colorado Gives page and form. So there's some basic data here where I want you to go pull those specific donations. If you haven't done this before, hopefully all of you have, is to your reports tab, and underneath that, donations. You can go filter the time period to a custom date range, to go look at the whole year-end window, to go look at Colorado Gives Day itself. And this will give you your total donations and your total revenue. You can export it. You can do all sorts of filtering when it's in a spreadsheet and things like that. But this is where you go to pull those metrics very simply. I think that's pretty straightforward. If you need any help with that, feel free to drop a note in the chat, or it's probably a good conversation for Slack as well if you're struggling with these reports. But they make it really easy to go find those numbers. The slightly more complicated one is pulling web traffic. So you do have to jump out of Colorado Gives and go to Google Analytics. So for some of you, again, this may be scary, but I'm here to walk you through exactly how to do it. To pull your website traffic, you basically need one report from Google Analytics. Here's a sample report for you. I'll blow it up on the screen so you can see all the different things. And here's every click that you basically need to make. Over here on the left, this is the little reports icon. If you've used Google Analytics in the past, but not Google Analytics 4, it looks a little bit different and maybe is a little bit scary, but again, hopefully we can make it simple here. You click that little reports icon that's over there on the left that I circled. Underneath that, then you can click this acquisition report. It's going to show you how everybody is showing up on your website. And then you can specifically drill into traffic acquisition, and that will pull up a report like what you see on your screen. This breaks down all the different kind of channels that are leading to new traffic on your website. You can filter your time frame up here. So I've, in this screenshot, filtered to that year-end season, November 15th through December 31st, which means that all the data down below is filtered to that specific window. The number that you're going to want to pull for this type of benchmarking is sessions. This is the not individuals, but it's the total amount of sessions on your website. So if I showed up on your website 5 times during this time, I would contribute 5 sessions. I'd be 1 user, but I'd contribute 5 sessions. That's the number I want you to pull for the sake of this benchmarking. That'll give you kind of apples to apples comparison to the other benchmarking that we have. The other thing to note here as well is that if you have Google Analytics integrated with coloradogives.org, you may be able to actually see donations here as well, which can be a very helpful thing for some deeper dive kind of reporting and understanding. It will likely show up as an event called Donation Success. If you don't have it integrated, you won't see it there, but we're going to use this primarily to pull sessions. A note here is that as an advanced feature, you can turn this on. I believe there's a cost to it, and Jordan can speak to that. But as an advanced feature, if you don't have it integrated yet, you can simply integrate your coloradogives.org with Google Analytics. You take your tracking ID, you copy and paste it right there where it says tracking ID, you hit save. And what that's going to do for you, again, is pass that event called Donation Success. So you can measure your donations in your Google Analytics reporting, which again can have some tremendous benefits as you do some deeper dive reporting. That wasn't that bad. That wasn't too scary. I don't think it was too scary. If you have further questions about that stuff, again, we can carry the conversation over into Slack, but hopefully we've simplified that enough for you. You'll have this recording, you'll have these slides. And again, if you don't have Google Analytics, I would make that your focus. Set up one of those Catch a Fire projects to go get some help with actually setting up that reporting. Here is your homework. I've created a little calculator using Google Sheets. I'll share the link to it with you in a moment. But basically, I want you to go find those 3 key metrics for 2 different timeframes. The first being the year-end window as a whole, November 15th through the end of the year. And then I want you to go look at Colorado Gives Day last year, which was on December 5th. Again, I've made this little Google sheet for you that walks you through the different questions. Number 1, how many sessions did you have on your website in year-end 2023? How many donations did you have? How much revenue did you have? You'll use coloradogives.org to get the donations and revenue. You'll use Google Analytics to get the visitors or the sessions. Then the same questions, but specifically for Colorado Gives Day. When you plug those numbers in, it will tell you your 3 key metrics. Traffic is very self-explanatory. That's just a copy and paste. Conversion rate is looking at what percentage of traffic actually gave, what's the average gift size. And then down below for Colorado Gives Day, I'm doing a quick calculation just to show you what percentage of your traffic for the year-end season came in on Colorado Gives Day. So this is your homework, is to go scan this QR code, grab this URL. Again, we'll post all this stuff in the homework channel as well, so you have it. But you'll see a screen like what's on your screen right now. It says, would you like to make a copy of this worksheet? You can say, make a copy to your own Google account. And then you can go plug in your numbers, use that little calculator. What I'd like you to do, I'll give you a moment to scan that. I see some phones coming out, so I'll give you a second to do it. And then again, we'll post these links as well, and you'll have all these slides. But I'd love for you to post your results in the homework channel in Slack. And again, we're not just pulling data for the sake of pulling data. We never want to do that. We always want it to be leading somewhere. So pull your results, but also tell us, where are you going to need to focus most this year? These aren't mutually exclusive, but I think it's helpful to have kind of a framework of, where do I need to make the most improvement? Is it in getting more people to just show up during that Colorado Gives Day season? Or maybe we're getting lots of people to show up, but we're just not getting a lot to convert. Maybe I need to make an intentional focus on, how do I get more of the people who are hitting the website and hitting the page to actually say yes to giving? So post your results, and then let us know what's going to be your area of focus. And please do so by August 16th. That'll give me a little bit of time to look at some of the responses before our next session together. Again, if you're feeling lost in all the data, Catch a Fire can be a tremendous help from those stock projects, or maybe you can even find a volunteer to help you with even some of the kind of deeper data analysis as well. I won't spend too much time here, but again, if you have access to all of those courses, if you've signed up as a member of the NextAfter Institute, a couple courses that may be helpful if you want to dive deeper. One is this, How to Grow a Digital Fundraising Program, with my good friend, Jeff Giddens, who draws with like a magic marker on a big glass screen. It's pretty cool, and breaks down these 3 key metrics in, I think, a really interesting and helpful way. The other course that may be helpful for you is this. It's called Google Analytics 4 for nonprofits. This is my friend Chris Mercer. He is an absolute industry expert as it comes to analytics and Google Analytics specifically. This is a very long course. I don't expect you to take the whole thing, but it's broken down to just kind of be step by step by step, working through the platform, working through different ways to use it and get answers to critical questions. You can take a couple sessions, go practice, build up your skills. A couple months later, jump back. It's built in a way you can kind of piecemeal it together like that. So those are some next step courses if you want to dive deeper. Very last thing is that next month's topic is going to be not about data and analytics, but is about how do we craft more compelling appeals. Specifically, we're going to talk a lot about value proposition and how to craft an effective value proposition. All right, we are at, I went a little over. I'm sorry, Jordan. Hopefully we still have time for some questions here. I do see a question from Kristen on Slack. How do we join Slack? I missed that info. I appreciate you sharing it again. Let me scroll all the way back to this slide. Two ways you can do it. One, you can scan this QR code and it should pull up a window on your phone to actually join the Slack community. The other thing too is that we can send you a direct invite to your email. You should have one from me in your inbox, but I can send another one as well. I'm jotting your name down to make sure we can do that. Amazing. Okay, we'll make sure that you get in, Kristen. Okay, cool. And then, Jordan, have you seen any other questions come in here that I've missed that we should make sure to chat through?
Yeah, and I was, I hope she's okay with it. I was chatting with her directly. Kay was just asking a good question, and I thought I'd bubble up here. She was asking if we should just be looking at Colorado Gives data, or if they have or are currently using a different form, should we be like holistically looking at all the data coming into our nonprofit for the homework?
Yeah, that's a great question. If you have the capability, if you are using other platforms, other tools for looking at those three key metrics, yes, I would encourage you to be holistic and looking at how much total traffic is hitting my website, pulling the total number of online donations. I should specify that word too. We don't want to lump in offline here because we're looking at what can we influence in the digital space for the time being. So I would pull all online donations, whether they're coming through coloradogives.org or any other sources, and then revenue combined from all those different sources as well. In these sessions, we're specifically talking about, and we're going to talk about broader strategy, but with the lens of how do you use the coloradogives.org tools to empower it. But if you're doing things outside of that platform as well, yes, I would include it in your metrics because it's going to give you a much more accurate picture. What's your sphere of influence and where are the opportunities ahead for you? It also might mean it's a little more complicated to pull the data. So fair warning.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was, a couple people on Slack, but we got that. So we'll help everybody on board. This was awesome. And I am not a Google Analytics person, but that was totally digestible and not overwhelming. So thank you, Nathan. That really made it easy, I hope, for everybody to kind of take a couple of key aspects and bring them back for August 16th. Cool. Now, I have scheduled here up until 10:30 if we have any additional questions for Nathan, or if we want to chat or talk about any questions you have around coloradogives.org, the platform, how you can use it, strategies. So I wanted to open it up. Are there any other questions? Maybe drop in chat and then we'll ask you to unmute.
And I do see the question that we put the homework link in the chat. I'm going to go grab that link real quick and I'll post it there in just a moment.
Awesome. Oh, Carrie, great. Carrie was just saying she's using Catchafire and so is the rest of her staff and it's going great. That's awesome. I know sometimes it's a little bit of upfront work, right? You got to like decide on the project, post the project, fill out the project before you post it. But once that happens, you get a volunteer who can do the work from there on out for you. Let's see. Can you send links via email rather than just chat and Slack? Shauna asked about email. So we are not doing emails this year for Level Up. We are communicating directly through the Slack. And that is because you get a lot of emails as nonprofits, and we know that. And we saw that there was low open rates in year one for the emails. And we want you to be able to have access to that content. So the two main areas you're going to get information is that landing page, the Slack, and then these, of course, monthly get-togethers. Okay, thank you, Shauna. Javier says, I have a question about the Copywriting 2.0 course offering. Yeah, Javier, let's go ahead, and I'm going to drop for anybody who really wants to talk about any of the offerings in greater detail. I love to just have a quick 30-minute meeting. So I'm going to drop my link in here, and let's do that. So copywriting for everybody, on the resources page, it does outline expectations for 1.0. You'll be getting invites from Institute for Sustainable Philanthropy in August. That's for everybody who's new. For the small handful of folks that are doing Copywriting 2.0, I've connected with you directly, so hello and thank you. And you guys are working on submitting your 10 pieces of copywriting homework. So everybody should have been communicating with 1.0 folks. You're going to get a direct invite to the training course platform called Canvas for the Copywriting 1.0 course. And that'll happen around early to mid-August. So here in just a couple of weeks. Good questions.
I see a question.
Anything else you're seeing? Okay, great.
Yeah, I see one from Heather. I was going to try to type a reply to, but easier to just talk about it. Heather's asking, if we don't have Google Analytics set up yet, is there another way to get website traffic? The answer to that becomes very contextual to you and to your tech stack. Google Analytics is not the only tool to measure web traffic, although it is the most common and it is like the primary tool, largely because it's free. It's possible that within the setup of your website, maybe you have a different analytics tool, but I wouldn't know what that is necessarily. There's some ways I could try to find it, but without being in the weeds of your tech stack, I don't know. So if you have someone that kind of manages your website, that might be a great resource to reach out to and see if they have any insights on how can we get some measurement on our website traffic in the absence of Google Analytics. You can also, if you're primarily, sending everyone through the coloradogives.org portal, you can go in there and look at your profile visits. So that's a way to get at it. You can't quite customize it to look at those specific giving periods. You can look at I think last 90 days, definitely last 12 months. I think there's another.
Yeah, I think it's 12 months. I don't know. Yeah, there's 3 levels. Yeah.
So that's a way to start to get some insights there. So you might look there too, but yeah, I would connect with whoever has set up or manages your website and see if they have any other solutions for you. And if not, honestly, even if they do, I would still work on getting Google Analytics set up because it's likely going, unless you're using some other sophisticated analytics tool, likely the reporting you have now is not going to be as good as what you would get from using a tool like Google Analytics. Is that helpful, Heather? I see you've turned your camera on.
Yes. Can I just ask a quick question?
Oh yeah.
So as usual, right? It's me as the IT person, which is really a problem. So I will look. We have Squarespace. I don't think we have anything set up yet. I started your Google Analytics class, which I need to finish. So my question is, so once you start it, you can't get historical data, right? It's only going to just start tracking it from when you start it, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why I would encourage you, even if, and not just you, Heather, but anyone, even if you're not using the whole tool right now, get it rolling so you have that historical data. Maybe you're not going to look at it for another year and you're just not at that point, but you're going to want to have that year of data when you're ready to actually go look at it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Jordan, anything else?
Yeah. Karen, I see your Slack question. Maybe that their notifications are turned off for you, or we'll double check that you're in there and in the right channels. So thank you for that. I'm not seeing anything else. How are we doing just in general on Colorado Gives Day, logging in? Does everybody have access? Are there any questions on general functionality or maybe upcoming campaigns that you guys are thinking about deploying here in the next couple weeks? Nice. All right. Everybody's on vacation. Honestly, me too. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's great. So it sounds like if there's no other questions here for this first one, I know it was a lot of information, though, Nathan, again, thank you. It was really digestible and easy to understand. As Nathan said, not every session is going to be data focused, but that is how we are measuring both your results within the Level Up program and overall digital fundraising progress and growth. So just really appreciate your time today. We are so excited for these sessions and for Level Up Year 2. If you need anything specifically, always reach out to me as a first step. If you need anything specific to coloradogives.org and maybe I'm in a meeting, you can always reach out to our support team. They will reply back fast at support@coloradogives.org. I hope everybody has a wonderful day and we will see you soon and see you on Slack.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Great to see you. Thanks for your time today. And yeah, looking forward to our session next month. We'll see you in Slack. Bye.